I can tell you what's happening right now, and you can decide whether or not this is for you or not. Okay, so I have a history, don't we all? And I'm 50 years old. And during that history, I seem to have learned various things about human thought as such. As such, human thought. Well, it's misleading because we have questions immediately about how we're defining the word thought, and for such questions, I would humbly refer you to a paper by a certain logician from Jena. And I'll leave it at that. So certain people such as me, we get, for whatever reason, because we have a history, we find ourselves looking for men of knowledge. Or in general, because people such as Dr. Kamoff surely exist. And she is as a fine teacher as any. So we are to emphasize again, from what I can see, well beyond the shores of gender binarity, and from here on out, basically what we replace gender non-binarity with is moral, ethical accountability. So to the degree that I'm worthy of being doubted by my neighbors is kind of my degree to up my game in the moral sense. So what does that mean? Just give more love. That's probably about all that it means. Just give more love. Moral accountability is just, self-accountability is just that you just recognize, yes, I'm a piece of shit. In God's eyes, I am a piece of shit. And, humans treat each other badly. And I don't have to participate in that if I can notice ways where I might be inadvertently participating in it. Of course, you're alive. You're participating. You're already implicated, Worth Baldwin. But I digress. Do I really, though? Do I really, though? Do I really digress? So, but I remember what it was like, and it's probably a lot different for you folks in Atlanta, Worth, because, again, we would have to verify my theory whether anybody came in any younger than 30 years old ever at any time. All of these questions we need to know. I need to know them. I mean, these are of vital psychoanalytic import, and a historical import, archival import, all round gestalt, everything in everything import. So what ends up happening is that you go on for a while, maybe some decades, and you think, things kind of look in a certain way. And inevitably, if you're doing the esoteric knowledge, you have to be very multidisciplinary, very polymathic, and so forth. There's no way around it, because we're talking about different parts of machinery, different parts of the whole noetic machinery that all have to be in motion, and they're all working in concert somehow. And that's part of the inquiry, is just learning more and more phenomenologically what those moving parts are really like, which is something that is grossly untheorized, I think, still. So anyway, if you have a goal that you're going to acquire esoteric knowledge, or you're going to go somewhere, you're going to join a group, you're going to do real efforts, and you do it for a number of years, and then you kind of deplete everything and you exhaust whatever resources, and then either you become a hobbyist or a thought leader of that hobby or something, but you just kind of stall out. You spin your hamster wheel for a while, and you kind of just try not to think about it. So, repression can just, once stability starts sinking in, you just start repressing. You start having to repress all of the world that's still in motion. Because all the world is catching your attention, and you're like, nah, I'm just going to stay put. I'm going to be stubborn. I don't want to learn anything. So what ends up happening is if you have this weird taste for knowledge, that you're insatiable and stuff, and you're like going halfway across the world and pounding on men's tables or women's tables or children's tables, or whoever it is that you think knows something. I mean, children have been messengers. I mean, there's massive history of this, children messengers. The point is not who the messenger is. The point is what you're doing with the message and how you feel about the message, what kind of materials that message is for you, what kind of use you can make of it. So what ends up happening is, if you don't stall out, as I say, and you just keep going, and you're like, well, I'm gonna read about, this. Now I have this little package of Pez candy, right? I know what Pez is. I think I know what Pez is. And so do you. But as it turns out, we know nothing about Pez. And as it turns out, Pez is my next intellectual career. So now, a year from now, when I can tell you every goddamn last thing about Pez candies, we can ask, why'd you do that? Well, a dyed-in-the-wool mystic, or being wired for this kind of insatiable knowledge, there is a logical structure such that, I mean, it's famous in history of logic. You never really know if this thing is going to be the thing. Like, this could just be a piece of trash, or it could be the divine spark, right? How the fuck do you know, right? You could be standing in front of some poor wretch who's living in squalor. They might be the prophet. How the fuck do you know? So it's the ethos of a man of knowledge. What ends up happening is, the more you learn, one way or another, it accumulates in sediments, and it kind of behaves like it's an increasing sampling rate. So you imagine you have a digital audio recorder, and the sampling rate is like 96K, right? And then, so you're cruising along for a while, for 10, 15 years, and you're like thinking that you're living ordinary everyday life, right? But what's been happening is, like your sense of time kind of keeps distorting, because what's happening is the resolution of thought keeps getting more and more particularized and more precise. So it's not even about word selection, it's about the selection of letters. And then alphabet choice, so if you have 100 alphabets that you have to choose one from for every single letter that you use to spell a word. So you're doing an aesthetic composition and a logical composition and a semantic and syntactic composition of this whole fucking thing, and it's like a 6-letter word. Let's suppose that that's 96K sampling rate. Okay. What ends up happening is you get this text like this. Remember, this wasn't a text. It was just a real-time conversation with my Uber driver. And I don't mean this to be unfair. I have said far more stupid things in my life, far more absent-minded things. This is not even stupid. He's probably just tired. We can leave it at that. It's hypothetical. It's fictitious. The point is not anything other than the content of the structure of the thing. So I noted this down. So I get into the Uber at 6:43 p.m. 6:43 p.m. His name is Romiz, Romiz. Dmitry, Duhrmeetri, Dmitry, right? So he didn't read my name. He just said Dmitry. There's no DR or DIR or DUR. It's DIM, right? So I said very carefully, I said Romiz. You going to Brooklyn? I said, I paused for about 5 seconds. I said, we're in Brooklyn. He goes, and then and then he goes, what? And I paused again and I said, we're in Brooklyn. And he kind of goes, and mumbles. So then there's some 10 seconds passed. And I said, I'm going to Sunset Park. Huh? That's where I'm going. Huh? I'm going to Sunset Park right now. That's where you're driving us. Oh, okay. So, if for whatever reason, because I'm like a neurotic, anxious fuck and I'm repressed beyond anybody, let's suppose that accounts for why my thought is operating at 96K. Well, then what that guy is to my 96K? That's like 8K. So, I mean, it's not that you think, oh yeah, I know something now. Literally what starts happening is you start noticing these big holes in people's speech. And you start wondering and the higher, and so basically it's a direct correlation. It's like some kind of a bit non-linear, I suppose. Like the more that you learn, then the more able you are to learn at an increased rate. The more interwoven everything gets with everything else. So it acts as a kind of ad hoc axiomatic foundation. How's 39 years for ad hoc? That thing is a fucking granite, it's a planet that's made out of granite rock. So you just start putting stuff on top of it, and it really, because the foundation, I fussed and I fought for 39 years about the foundation, I guess, You think about foundations your whole life. You spend thousands of hours thinking about foundations. you never really go, okay, I'm going to build a foundation now. Just never occurs to you. First, you have to know what are we talking about? What is a foundation? By the time you figure it out, you've already got one.